Hello quilters. Well, we're going to continue working on block 1 of the Starlight Starbright, and this time we are going to work on this center section, this middle unit, and we're specifically right now going to work on the Flying Geese units. Now I like to use what's called the no waste method for these, and while there is a little bit of waste because we cut these oversized and then we have to trim them down, it is a quick and easy way I have found to make 4 flying geese that are to the size I need them to be, and they come out really nicely. So I'm going to start by laying my large square right side up on my, I'm again using the sandpaper to kind of hold things in place. And I'm going to start by laying then one of my smaller squares. I'm going to lay it right sides together down here at the bottom, lining up the edges like so. And we'll take another one and do the same thing. We're going to lay it so it's right sides together on top there. And next I will take my ruler, and you will notice that I like to use my diagonal lines to line up my edges here, so I'm going to do that and scooch it up to where I have about a pencil width there, and I'm going to draw a line down the entire length here. Okay, so there's my line, and now I'm going to take it over to my machine, and just like we did with the half square triangles, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch from each side of that drawn line. Over at my machine, you can see I have my line lined up with the edge of my foot again. My needle is right at the top of the fabric there, and I'm ready to sew. Now I find that I lay it this way so that this top piece is going in the same direction that I'm sewing. If you go the other way so that this piece was on top and it was pointing up here, you'd have to be careful as you came across it to make sure that everything stayed lined up and didn't get pushed out of the way. But I found this, doing it this way just seems to solve that problem. Scrap here and do the ender, and I'm going to come in here and clip this and clip the other piece off here, and then I am going to sew down the other side. Now again, I want to keep that so that that one part, let's bend this down for you a little bit here, so that this part is still facing away from my needle as I go. So this time I've lined it up on the other side, and away I go. Stitch across my ender there, and then I'll clip this, and I'll be ready to cut it apart on my line and press open. And I'm going to press it, when I press it I will be pressing towards the small triangle so that they'll get pressed in this direction. Like so. Maybe if I turn it like this you can see. So, and then we'll have, at this point we'll have 2 pieces to work with. You can see I have my piece pressed here, and they look kind of funny at this stage, but this is I think the really fun part, because now we are about to turn this funny looking thing into 2 flying geese units. So I have another one of my squares, and on the remaining 2 squares I've gone ahead and drawn my line down the center, and I'm going to again line it up with my edges like so, and then I will do the same thing. I will sew down both sides of that drawn line, 1/4 inch on each side of that line. Notice how I've slowed down as I'm coming down to this part just to keep things nice and straight. Here's the one, and then we'll repeat that process with the second unit. Okay, we'll finish it off here with the ender scrap. Cut these apart. And then we're going to do the same thing down the other side. And again, because I like to have it facing this direction, I'm now going to use the other side of my presser foot. Do the same thing with the second one. Okay, so I will cut these apart, and once again we're going to cut on this line to cut them apart, and then we will have, each one will make, you see our flying geese unit there. So we'll have a total of 4 flying geese, and all we'll have left to do after we cut this and press them, all we'll need to do is trim them. Well, as you can see, I have pressed my flying geese, and now it's time to trim them. I have in my instructions given you very specific directions about how to trim them using a regular ruler, which is, I know that's what a lot of you have and have to deal with, so I like to include that. It is a little tricky, so we want these to be trimmed to 2.5 by 4.5, so 2.5 by 4.5. So what we need to know is what the middle of that is, and the middle of 4.5 is 2 1/4. So as you can see, I've got my 1/4 inch, my 2 1/4 inch mark. I want that right at the tip of that point that's there. And I also wanted to have it so that this is my 1/4 inch seam allowance. I want to have a 1/4 inch above that tip. Remember, we talked about in order to have those sharp points, we have to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance above that tip, or it gets cut off. The other tricky part on this is down here at the 2.5 mark. I have my 2.5 inch mark is right here, and I want it so that it comes together right at this seam. So that's going to give me a sharp point on this side. Now the other side is a little tricky to see, so what I do is I take a piece of, this is actually like a paper board, and so I want the 4.5 inch line here. So that's this little line right here, and I want to make sure that my 2.5 inch line also end at the point. If it's skewed a little bit, let me just kind of skew it. If it's skewed a little bit, then when we put this down and look at our 2.5 inch line, you can see that if I cut it here, I'm actually going to end up cutting off a bit of the point. So you want to be sure that you have it lined up as I showed you. Let's see if we've got it going now. Double check. A little bit more. That's looking good, and my 1/4 inch mark is still right there good. So I'm going to trim off these first 2 sides. Okay, and then we need to flip it over time we're going to use that 4.5 inch mark and that 2.5 inch mark. So we've got our 4.5 here, running here, and our 2.5 here. And let's see, I have to work around my camera. Okay, so then I still have my 1/4 inch mark at the point, and I would really like it if that line were a little more lined up. There we go. I still have a 1/4 inch seam here for the seam allowance above that point. So now I am going to trim off these two sides. Okay, so there is one of our flying geese. Now I want to show you my favorite ruler for doing this, and after going through all of that, you'll see why I love this ruler so much. This is a block lock ruler. I'm using the 2x4 finished. It's going to give me the you can see the dotted line. It has the built-in seam allowance. So what this ruler does is I put my flying geese down there, and then it has like these little ridges. So the ridges fit right into the seam, and it just locks into place there. That's why they call it the block lock ruler. And so then all I have to do is lock that into place that way, and then I can, again, I'm trying to work around my camera here, so my angles for cutting are a little awkward. I'm going to trim away the top, and then I'm just going to flip this around, and again make sure I'm all locked in with my seams, and then do the other side. So it's just so much easier and so much quicker, and I have my perfect flying geese unit. So I do highly recommend these block lock rulers. You have to buy the one you need for the size, but you know, this 2x4 size is one I use all the time. I hardly ever make a quilt that doesn't use it in it more than once, so I will do several blocks, and we will have several blocks in our quilt for this quilt along that use this very same size. So I do highly recommend it for the ease of getting accurate flying geese. There are a couple other rulers out there that people use and enjoy. This just happens to be my favorite. So now, to finish off this particular unit, we're going to be attaching these rectangles, and we want to be sure that we do that at this side of the flying geese, so that our block comes out looking the way it's been designed to look. So we're going to line these up, our rectangles here, and then just go ahead and sew them together. And then you just want to make sure that you have those straight edges lined up as you go. That's another reason that I sew rather slowly comparatively, I guess, because I'm always checking those edges to make sure that I have them, that they stay lined up through the whole process. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish sewing these together, and then we will be ready to put the whole block together.